Perhaps the most influential filmmaker of the Soviet era, Dziga Vertov defined documentary film and revolutionized nonfiction cinema with creative approaches and a variety of innovative techniques. Vertov's filmmaking was heavily influenced by Marxist and Leninist ideology, and this influence is apparent in Vertov's most recognized and influential documentary, Man with a Movie Camera, from 1929. Over the next few minutes, we will take a brief look at the life and filmmaking of Dziga Vertov. Born David Abelvich Kaufman in 1896, Vertov belonged to a working-class Jewish family and grew up in Białystok, Russia, modern-day eastern Poland, with two brothers, Boris and Mikhail Kaufman. During World War I, the Kaufman family fled to Moscow to escape the invading German army. Despite increasing anti-Semitism in Russia under Tsar Nicholas II in the years leading up to the October Revolution, Vertov managed to study at the Psychoneurological Institute in Petrograd between 1916 and 1917. Around this time, Kaufman took the name Dziga Vertov, which means spinning gypsy or spinning top. Soon after the October Revolution, Vertov took a job working on newsreel footage and producing propaganda for the Bolsheviks' agitprop trains. Having fled the German pogroms and having endured anti-Semitism under the Tsar, it's easy to see how Vertov was drawn to Lenin's vision for a new Russia, free of ethnic and religious persecution. It's worth noting that Vertov's entire catalog is arguably propaganda, funded by the Russian state. That being said, Vertov's catalog demonstrates that a piece of propaganda can also be an educational material and a work of art. It was at his job working on newsreel films that Vertov met Elizaveta Svilova, a skilled editor and the only person in the department willing to execute Vertov's bizarre editing instructions. Vertov later married Svilova, who edited all their films and who is seen in Man with a Movie Camera editing the film. Vertov's brother Mikhail also worked on most of Vertov's films. Vertov, Svilova, and Mikhail's early films include Kino Eye, Forward Soviet, A Sixth Part of the World, and The 11th Year. Much of the footage in Man with a Movie Camera also appears in Vertov's newsreel work and early films. Vertov's approach to filmmaking involves establishing a narrative with a variety of images. While most newsreels of the time were single shots with minimal context, Vertov distinguished himself by using multiple camera setups and moving camera shots to capture more of the subject. Additionally, Vertov was a master of juxtaposition, utilizing the power of suggestion to imply a relationship between two images, whether or not those two images were directly related in that moment when they were filmed. Vertov's approach minimized staged elements as much as possible and involved distancing the world of cinema from the worlds of theater and fiction. Just as Lenin called upon Russians to reevaluate the foundations of their culture and society and to challenge the gender roles and ethnic stereotypes of old, Vertov called upon filmmakers to reevaluate the merit of fiction film and to resist the urge to resort to tropes and cliches which would only perpetuate old ways of thinking. Indeed, Vertov even rejected the term director, suggesting that it was a term related to theater. In addition to staged elements, Vertov strived to minimize intertitles in his early films, and avoided using any intertitles at all in Man with a Movie Camera. Vertov's approach also consistently promotes the achievements of the Russian working class. Lenin sought to forge a culture of the workers where men and women alike could take pride in their labor, knowing that they were building a better Russia. Vertov's Man with a Movie Camera has a large focus on workers in Russian society, celebrating women in the labor force and depicting labor as the backbone of infrastructure and energy in New Russia. Vertov sums up his approach to Man with a Movie Camera as an experiment in the cinematic communication, of visual phenomena, without the use of intertitles, a film without intertitles. Without the help of a scenario, a film without a scenario. Without the help of theater, a film without actors, without sets, etc. This new experimentation work by Kino Eye is directed towards the creation of an authentically international, absolute language of cinema on the basis of its complete separation from the language of theater and literature. Vertov used a variety of creative techniques in Man with a Movie Camera, including stop motion, slow motion, double exposure, dissolve, split screen, and reverse. In addition to the celebration of the working class, recurring themes in Man with a Movie Camera include awakening or the opening of the eye, and bathing or washing. The awakening might be a metaphor for the birth of cinema, or the awakening of the Russian working class. The washing, the working class ritual of wiping away the sweat and dirt of an honest day's work, is likely symbolic of society washing away the troubles of old Russia. Much of Man with a Movie Camera remains open to interpretation. The film was popular and earned Vertov both positive and negative reviews. Vertov enjoyed a successful career, and Vertov's crew went on to produce Enthusiasm in 1931 and 3 Songs of Lenin in 1934. Vertov remained a somewhat obscure figure in the filmmaking community, alienating himself from the industry with his purist philosophies and his absolute rejection of fiction film. Vertov's refusal to provide a written explanation of Man with a Movie Camera nearly resulted in the Soviet state rejecting funding for the project. It became increasingly difficult for Vertov to secure funding from the state for such experimental endeavors which utilized multiple cameras and collected massive amounts of footage, most of which would never actually be used. In addition, the Soviet government in the 1930s, under Joseph Stalin's leadership, refused funding for abstract and surrealist art, only funding realist artists. Sadly, Vertov's work would become less relevant in Russian society in his later years. In 1954, Dziga Vertov died of cancer in Moscow. Vertov's theories regarding nonfiction film, specifically the concept of a life caught unaware, or fly-on-the-wall observational filmmaking, inspired the cinema verite movement of the 1960s, and Vertov's films continue to influence filmmakers today. Concepts of reality, of truth in cinema, are largely rooted in the writing and filmmaking of Dziga Vertov. Additionally, Vertov's ability to convey a message or imply a relationship by juxtaposing 2 seemingly unrelated subjects is a fundamental element of news, propaganda, and documentary film, even today. The focus on relationships between images, especially involving industrial imagery, paved the way for later experimental films like Godfrey Reggio's Koyaanisqatsi. In addition to inspiring the cinema verite film movement, Vertov's films are credited as early examples of observational film, poetic and avant-garde film, expository documentary, reflexive documentary, and propaganda filmmaking. After the October Revolution, Russia's future seemed full of possibility, and Vertov seized the opportunity to contribute to the revolution through film. His hopes for a Russia free of ethnic persecution, gender inequality, and class antagonisms were the foundation of his creative philosophy and filmmaking. Vertov's films symbolize a struggle for a more equal society, and that struggle is an international struggle which continues even today. This is likely why Vertov's films appear so authentic and remain so relatable. I hope you've enjoyed this short introduction to Dziga Vertov, and I encourage you to take a look at Man with a Movie Camera, as well as Vertov's other films. Perhaps next time you're watching a documentary film, you'll recognize Vertov's influence. It's also worth reflecting on Vertov's broader concepts regarding the profound effect of film media and the ability of film to both document and influence the trajectory of culture and society.